lord, if you're interested.
Perhaps another evening.
He wasn't ready for bed yet. One of the rakes came forward with a substantial bundle of cash and jammed it into Tom's hand. Your winnings, Langdon. No sooner than the cash was in his hand than Tom turned and handed it to the woman.
For putting up with Culver.
I couldn't, my lord, she said, as she tucked the money into her bodice. She gave him a wink. Night, love. She pressed a quick kiss to his cheek, then strode off into the darkness.
That was near £70, Langdon,
Mowbray said in shock.
She'll have better use of it than me.
There was no shortage of funds in Tom's coffers, between income from his earldom as well as his generous allowance provided by his father, the Duke. Other lordlings and bucks swam in seas of debt, hounded constantly by tailors, club proprietors, and wine shop owners. Tom made certain to pay everyone on time, for no other reason than the fact that he could.
I'd do it again for free if it meant humiliating Culver. Bloke's had it coming since he refused to cover his mistress's bills.
You're a daft bastard, Mowbray said with a shake of his head.
I'd agree,
Tom said affably,
except everyone knows about my parents' celebrated fidelity. Bastard indeed, but not blood.
Someone handed him a bottle of whiskey, and he took a drink before passing the spirits along to a trio of bucks who looked in dire need of refreshment.
Good Christ, here you are!
The throng opened up just enough to allow Christopher Ellingsworth to emerge, looking slightly bedraggled despite his military bearing. Since returning home from the war a year ago, Ellingsworth had renewed the friendship he and Tom had begun at Oxford, and from that point forward, they had been nigh inseparable, with the exception of tonight.
Missed the excitement.
Tom handed his pistol to the footman, who returned it to its polished mahogany case.
Not for want of trying,
his friend said.
I've been to the opera, 2 gaming hells, and a phaeton race. Everywhere I went, I'd just missed you by 10 minutes.
He shook his head, but his eyes gleamed with reluctant admiration.
Good thing we're not competing for the title of most scapegrace gentleman in London, or else you'd best me. That trophy isn't much sought after anyway.
Why such urgency to find me?
Tom lifted an eyebrow. My father's not looking for me, I hope.
The Duke periodically got it into his head that Tom would somehow reform, and conduct himself with the dignity and sobriety of a ducal heir with a family history of deeply traditional beliefs. But that was precisely why Tom spent his days asleep, and his nights in endless rounds of revelry. One day, hopefully in the far distant future, Tom would inherit the title, and with it, the morass of responsibilities and duties that came with being one of the most powerful men in England, and a voting record dedicated to preserving the ancient systems of power. Life, as Tom knew it, would end. He'd say goodbye to nights entertaining opera dances, midnight swims in the Serpentine, and behaving like the kingdom's veriest rogue, with his equally dissolute companions keeping him company. As a marquise's third son who had recently sold his commission, Ellingsworth had considerably less money, but shared Tom's appetite for running riot. There wasn't one corner of the city they hadn't explored in search of amusement and pleasure. Ellingsworth hooked an arm around Tom's neck and led him several paces away from the celebrants. In a low voice, he said,
I've heard about something that I knew would interest you.
A place in Bloomsbury called the Orchid Club.
Tom groaned.
I've grown weary of clubs. Same games of chance, same people, same wine, same everything.
His friend's grin flashed.
This club is different. For one, it opens its doors only once a week, and it just so happens to be open tonight.
That wasn't enough to snare Tom's interest. Many clubs did what they could to cultivate an air of mystery, in order to ensure steady business from those eager to discover its secrets.
What else makes it so special? Is it a brothel?
It is most decisively not a brothel.
You'll need this, however.
Ellingsworth unhooked his arm from around Tom's neck. He reached into his coat before producing something, then slipped the item into Tom's hand. Tom held up the object so he could study it better. It was a